Macmillan Audio presents Killjoy, written by Cleeves, read for you by Simon Mattacks. Chapter 1. At 7 o'clock on November the 30th, the Grey Starling Art Centre was busy. The fog seeped inland from the Tyne and hung around the horse-chestnut trees in Hallowgate Square, but the building had a light in every window, and the car park behind the house was full. Hallowgate had once been a prosperous Victorian suburb. The wealthy middle classes from Newcastle who made their money from ships or coal built houses there. Then the conurbation spread, and Hallowgate became part of the North Tyneside sprawl. Its fortunes declined. It had never been as smart as Tynemouth or Martinsdean to the east, and was too far from the metro line and the main road to be taken up by serious commuters. From attic windows in the solid red brick houses, there were views of the cranes along the river, a rope factory, the remaining skeleton of a boatyard. Hallowgate was close to the Tyne, but this part had an identity of its own. Quiet, shabby, forgotten. The rest of the square was quiet. Most of the residents were elderly. Recent news reports of skirmishes with the police on the Starling Farm, a nearby council estate, kept them inside. The talk in the pubs was of joyriding, ram raiders. The streets seemed dangerous. On the corner of Anchor Street, the Bengali grocer's shop was still open, but the languid teenage girls behind the counter had no customers to serve and spent the evening reading magazines and sucking sweets. By then, the fog was so thick that even with the streetlights they could not see the visitors to the art centre in any detail. Even if the visibility had been perfect, they were unlikely to take any notice. Evan Powell drove into the Grey Starling car park, saw that it was full, and drove out again to find a space in the square. It would not have occurred to him to cause inconvenience by double parking. The manoeuvre took longer than he'd anticipated, and it was just after 7 when he opened the door to the small music room where the other members of the choral society were arranging chairs and music stands. Punctuality was important to him, and he'd been faintly anxious that they might have started. It came as a relief to see that 3 other people came in after him. Before the conductor called them to order, he wondered briefly if his son John had remembered that he would be here tonight to give him a lift home. It was a bad time for youngsters to be out on the streets alone. In the main hall, the Tyneside Youth Theatre had just begun its rehearsal. The teenagers were limbering up to loud rock music. The windows were covered by blackout curtains, and the room was dimly lit by coloured spots. They moved barefoot across the wooden floor, jumping and twisting, dressed in cycle shorts or lycra leggings and loose, sexless T-shirts. Prue Bennett, sitting on the stage and watching them, admired their youth and energy with a trace of envy. She switched off the large cassette recorder. "OK, everyone," she said. "Relax." Then she turned to the theatre's director, who was too grand, it seemed, to take the exercises, but who came in now once the real work of the evening was to begin. Gus Lynch was a local man. His dad had been a draftsman at the Swan Hunter boatyard, and he'd been to school in Wallsend. The trustees of the Grey Starling thought it was local pride that had brought him back to run the centre and direct the youth theatre, but he was too canny for that. Soon after drama school, he'd starred as a token Geordie in an ITV sitcom. The series had run for years to a dwindling audience, and when it came to an end, Gus was virtually unemployable. He had no experience of the serious stage, and in its final years, the series had been something of a joke. Advertisers and the producers of the new, slick comedy programmes were not interested in anyone associated with it. Gus was an ambitious man, and although he'd played hard to get, he'd welcomed the approaches from the centre's trustees. He recognised the potential the post had for reviving his image. It made him the North East's most prominent media man. He was invited onto late-night television shows to discuss provincial theatre. The money was crap, he had to admit, but in the scheme of things, the Grey Starling Centre was performing a useful function. The situation comedy had almost been forgotten, and he was already looking forward to something new. He cultivated the part of the famous actor. Despite middle age, he wore a lot of denim, and he swore at them all. The teenagers thought he was wonderful. They gathered together to listen as he joined Prue on the stage. "Let's do some work on the last scene," he said. "When Sam Smollett rescues Abigail from the crowd around the gallows. Don't forget, I want real menace, not just a lot of shouting and abuse." He was very thin, and his head was the shape of a skull, Prue saw now, prompted by talk of the gallows. The group had devised the play, The Adventure.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?